Tonight, President Obama has told NPR that, quote, "We need to take action, and we will," unquote, in response to Russia's hacking. Joining me is former CIA Director James Woolsey and CNN military analyst and retired Army General Mark Hertling. Director Woolsey, what do you make of President Obama's comments? What options does the United States have in a situation like this?
Well, President Obama is kind of the master of the empty threat. It was 4 years ago that he threatened Syria with severe consequences if they crossed the red line and used chemical weapons against their own people. They did exactly that, and he shrugged and handed the problem over to Russia. So one wants to take some of his threats with a bit of a grain of salt. The other problem is that we have not hardened our electric grid the way the Russians have theirs and some other countries have theirs. And it could be quite vulnerable to hacking, especially against the control systems which run over the Internet. And the Internet is very welcoming to outsiders. It was designed so everybody could share. And so getting into it and hacking in it and causing trouble in it is not as hard as we wish it was. We have a very good system out at the fort, out at NSA, and very able people and very able American hackers. But you can't harden the electric grid overnight. And it takes some work and some commitment, and we've seen none of that from the Obama administration.
I want to talk more about this. We've just gotten the audio of President Obama and what he said, so let's just play that and then we'll continue the discussion.
I think there is no doubt that when any foreign government tries to impact the integrity of our elections, that we need to take action, and we will, at a time and place of our own choosing.
So, Director Woolsey, when you were saying that Russia has hardened their electric grid, ours is not, and it's not something you can do overnight, is the implication that if we were to retaliate, if the United States was to retaliate through cyber means against Russia, that then it could be this tit-for-tat back and forth, and we are perhaps more vulnerable than they are?
We could have some serious problems. Look at what the Russians were doing in Estonia. Look what they did to Crimea. In Crimea, look what they did to Ukraine. Going against their electric grid. And there's another dimension of this, that the Russians have been trying to undermine Western democracies, including ours, for at least 80 years, at least the late 1940s. They instituted a system called disinformation, otherwise known as lying. And they've used it. They have hundreds of thousands of people committed to working on it, according to Ion Mihai Pacepa, the head of Romanian intelligence who defected back in '79 to us, most senior defector we ever got. And Pacepa says in his books and otherwise that Russia is all the time trying to undermine Western democracies. They focused on Europe more until relatively recently, going after some of the weaker political parties in Europe and so forth, but they've now expanded to here. But it's not new. It's not Russia, even when they smile. They have still maintained the disinformation program, and they're right now, probably, finding some way to try to get into the system. It was not hacking up until relatively recently. Now it's hacking, but they've used different technologies over the years and over the decades.
Yeah.
This is not new that they're trying to damage Western democracy.
General Hertling, what do you make of the possibilities for the U.S. to retaliate?
There's no possibility, Anderson. We are in the midst of a cyber campaign right now. It's not all-out cyber warfare. When I was commander in Europe a few years ago, it was an element of our defense of Europe. We watched Estonia, as the director said, what happened there a few years ago, in Georgia, in Ukraine, and many other places. Now, when you're talking about what's going on now, we're in the early stages of this. The spyware has been in place. We've seen many examples of it. Mr. Podesta, Senator Graham, several others have said that they have had spyware in place in their systems. It has affected trust. That's usually phase 2 of the campaign, of a cyber campaign, affecting the trust of government information. The next thing is, how do you affect infrastructure? What do you attack and how do you attack it? And you have to be very quiet and nuanced about it to make sure that the attacker is not known specifically. We've seen that in this entire campaign that Russia has initiated several years ago, and it has peaked in the last several months. And then finally, if you get to the full extent of a campaign, you're talking about some type of shutdown, whether it's a financial apparatus, electrical power grid, or a government. So all of these things are element. We've got to be very careful about it, and the cries to have people investigating it is critically important right now. Now, the President, in his statement tonight, has suggested that there are counters to this. One of the main elements of cyber warfare is you never allow people to know exactly what you're doing, and it has to be done in a very nuanced approach. And I think that's what the President is saying is, hey, we've got capabilities too. Be careful what you're doing, Russia, because it could come back to haunt you in a variety of ways. And I think that's the threat that the President was making in a very nuanced way tonight.
Right, and he pointed out at a time and place of our choosing. Director Woolsey, just in terms of an investigation, is that something you support? I mean, you have right now Republicans and Democrats calling for a full investigation of exactly what happened, how it happened. Is that something you would support?
Sure. I think we need to know what took place, and a congressional investigation or a national commission would be one way to do it. But, one thing we have to keep in mind here, and the General referred to it in a way, is noise doesn't help a lot. Talking about we are shaming you doesn't help a lot. Teddy Roosevelt said, speak softly and carry a big stick. And with the case of dealing with these cyber issues, sometimes it's better to say nothing and carry a big stick, or increase the size of your stick as you can so you can use it effectively. But let them wonder where things are coming from. Don't always get out there and start trumpeting about what you're doing.
Interesting.
And that is exactly what Russia has been doing. They have allowed us to wonder where it's coming from. And unfortunately, some of our politicians have fallen right into the laps of that and saying, gee, I wonder if it's Russia. I wonder if it's a fat guy sitting on a bed or any of those other things. So I think we've better be very careful, because this is 21st century asymmetric warfare, and it is very effective.
The Russians call it contact-free war. And by that they mean it's not contact between bullets and human beings, but it is conflict between different electronic systems and the rest. And it's contact-free, perhaps, but it's certainly not conflict-free.
Yeah, or impact-free, unfortunately.
And it also falls into their normal doctrine. You mentioned a couple of words earlier, Director, and I'll give you one more. It's the Maskirovka. Let people believe that it's coming